Good day. I have my TV show, Betty Nuovo, and I've been doing this for several years, like 20. And I have with me as a guest Robin Scheu.
Hi, Betty.
And she took my place when I retired or left, didn't run again, and she ran in my place. So this is your first year.
Yes, it is.
Well, you only had about half of it.
Exactly. And I have to say that you're irreplaceable, Betty, but I'm doing my best.
So how are you finding it? And you took my seat.
I did take your seat. That was part of what I was going to mention.
And that seat number
is 84.
84, and it's also
on your license plate.
On license plate.
Right.
So you saw 84 on my license plate while I drove around all the time, and now you're going to see Robin's.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, shall I just start a little bit about what it's like to be a legislator? And a brand new one?
Yeah, brand new one.
Yeah. So, just for a little background, I've lived in Middlebury for 25 years. I've known you for most of that time, and been on your show. As you said, you've been doing it for a long time. So when I was the school board chair, you had me on your show, and I currently run the Addison County Economic Development Corporation in addition to being a legislator, and so I've been on your show for that. So it's fun to be back in a new capacity. Last year was my first run for office at the state level, and was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I'm really glad that I did it.
You knocked on doors?
I knocked on almost 1,800 doors. We had both a primary and a general election, so it was like running two campaigns. So it was a lot of work. It was fun to meet people, and tiring too.
Yeah.
But great. Energizing in some ways and tiring in others. But a lot of shoe leather, which is great. It's really fun to meet people in the community. So after we had election, the general election was November 8th, and then the Snelling Center puts on an orientation for all new legislators, both in the House and the Senate. So there were about 30 of us that went for 2.5 days the week after Thanksgiving to get our orientation.
We never had that when I got in 1980. There was no such thing.
Yeah. Well, the Snelling Center wasn't even around then.
No.
But they do a really great, it's totally nonpartisan. So we got to meet the whole freshman class, which was really fun. And we were, overwhelmed with information and data and budgets, different education budgets, and the general fund budget, and this one and that one, and how it works, and how bills become law, and decorum. We've actually had a few since then with the full House about decorum in the House and rules, which is quite a good thing. One of the things that I've learned is most people are familiar with Robert's rules. And in the House, we use Mason's rules because they're a little more efficient in some ways. They're similar to Robert's rules, but there's some things that we don't do.
Yeah.
You're more of an expert on that than I am. I'm just kind of following along.
Yeah.
But so that was really helpful to get to meet some colleagues who were new with us. And then our first day was we got sworn in, and I was honored and delighted that I had 11 family members come to watch me get sworn in from Boston and Maine and New Hampshire, and that was a lot of fun to be sworn in. And then that morning we also got our committee assignments, and I'll talk about my committee in a moment, but we had to fill out a long questionnaire about what we thought our skills were and our interests were, and rank our committees in the order top 5, and why we thought we wanted to be on those committees. And that was also
top 5.
Top 5 committees. So there are 14 committees in the House, and we were supposed to rank our top 5 choices.
But you're only going to get one.
You're only going to get one. Only going to get one. And then in the afternoon, we did the famous picking your seat in the House, the floor of the House. So
that's kind of fun.
It is fun. It is fun. And you had told me so much about all of these details and things that I think a lot of people didn't always know about. So I could say to people, well, Betty said this is what's going to happen. So it was really helpful to have your expertise and know what to expect. And I had been practicing in your chair, and I liked it a lot. So for those that have not witnessed the famous picking your seat in the House.
This is only for freshmen.
Yes. So what happens is the current legislators get to go pick their seats first, and most of them pick their
Same.
current seat.
Yeah.
But some switch.
Yes.
And in fact, the person that was next to you when you were there switched his seat. So then we have a map of what's left, and then we call it the sorting hat. If anybody's read Harry Potter, the sorting hat. So everybody's names are put in
the freshman's name, yeah.
Yeah, and then names are pulled out randomly, and then you get to go pick your seat in that. So thankfully it's not alphabetical at S. I'd be way at the end. But I was in the top 10, I think, of seat getters, and so I got your seat. It was still available. So and it's a great location. If people are looking or coming into the house, the speaker is straight ahead, and it's over to the right, but a little bit closer to the speaker on the right-hand side, about halfway up. And I love that seat, so thank you.
You can see coming in from both ends.
Yes.
And also from the other side.
Right, and you can see the people that are up in the gallery
Yeah.
up above, so we're often recognizing people, and it's nice to be able to wave and say hello. So.
Yeah.
So that was a kind of a whirlwind the first week. And then we spent, we got our committee assignments, and we spent the first couple of weeks kind of all getting educated, because there were many committee changes made.
Different chairs?
The chairs pretty much stayed the same, but a lot of the committee members were moved around. So many committees, most committees are 11 people. They're not all, but most have 11 committee members. And they usually kept 4, and then 7 left. That was what I saw in several committees. So there was a lot of mixing up of people, which means that you bring your expertise from one committee to another committee. And I think that's not a bad idea to have. I talked to one committee chair who said, yes, so 7 more people are spreading the word about economic development around the the house. So that was a nice way to look at it. So I got my first choice of committee, and that's the Corrections and Institutions Committee. There are...
What?
So I'll explain that. So there are, of the 14 committees, there are 2 committees that deal only with money, and there are 2 committees that deal with money and policy, and then the other 10 committees are just policy. So I'm on a money and a policy committee combined. The 2 money committees are the Appropriations Committee, which is the one that does the general fund budget, so the big budget that everybody thinks about when they think about the legislature. And then Ways and Means, which, as you know, does all the revenues and fees.
They have to make an income to match the budget.
Right, exactly. And then the 2 money and policy committees are the Transportation Committee, because they have a transportation bill with dollars attached to it, and then Corrections and Institutions. So corrections, as you folks would guess, is about our prison system, our correctional facilities in the state and out of the state. And then institutions is the capital bill, and it's all the money that the state goes out to borrow. Everything that the state borrows has to come through our committee. And we have a 2-year bill. A 2-year bill that we put together. So at the beginning of the biennium, which we are now, we're going to be doing for fiscal year 18 and 19. We're putting the money out in each of those 2 years. And the committee went to that a few years ago, and it's been a lot easier for people to plan and budget, because they know at least for 2 years what's going to happen.
And the 18 budget you're looking at was already looked at a year ago.
Well, we're in the middle of fiscal year 17 right now.
Yeah.
So the budget that the governor presented and the capital bill proposal, all came out at the end of January when he made his bill. So we did a budget adjustment for fiscal year 17, which is the year we're in now.
Yeah.
And as you know, our fiscal year runs July 1st through June 30th.
Yes.
So it's halfway through the year. So in the capital bill, I never would have guessed from the title of our committee, we deal with pretty much all the agencies across the state of Vermont. So everybody comes through our committee, and it's just fascinating. So we have the Agency of Natural Resources coming in, because we're looking at money for the Clean Water Act. We do municipal pollution control grants and clean water revolving loan funds and other improvements. The Agency of Agriculture, also related to the Clean Water Act, grants and programs to help buy equipment to help people follow the requirements. The new requirements are related to the Clean Water Act. Forest Parks and Recreation comes in, because they have, all the parks around the state, and they need to do capital improvements, and they come in and talk to us. We've been asked to look at some IT projects, one related to the judiciary, about case management, and the judiciary system. One of their systems still runs on DOS, which is like before my kids were born. It's a very old system. And another one is for an integrated eligibility project with the Agency of Human Services, which would be able to connect all the programs that they offer to people. So a person who's using services doesn't have to go to 16 different places. They can go to one place, and the agency would have all their records and all their information. So that will be a fabulous project when that finally gets done. Then we're doing another one related to project management and finance for the state. So those are some IT projects. We work with the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. They also do clean water work, but they also are doing housing for low and middle income folks. So, so it's just fascinating, the broader. You just get to see Vermont in a huge way. This is the committee that when Irene hit, the whole Waterbury complex.
Oh yeah.
Remember that? So all of the funding to build the new Waterbury came through this committee.
What about where they went? The whole agency had to move.
Oh, many, yes. And the people are still all around. So Buildings and General Services is the agency that works with all of our owned and leased properties throughout the state. So we own, I think it's a little over 300 buildings, and then lease 1,100 spaces, something like that. So they're in charge of moving people all over the place. They're also so there are still people that are not back in Waterbury yet. There are still some buildings, but most of it's been redone. And we actually got a tour of it early on in the session. So it was really fun to see the new building, and I think it was a great thing. One of the things that got moved that we're again working on in our committee is the Agency of Agriculture and the Agency of Natural Resources had a laboratory that was there, and that got kind of wiped out. And that's going to be moved in a bigger one created at the Vermont Technical Center, Vermont Technical Colleges on their property. They're going to have this Ag and A&R lab that's going to be able to do water quality testing and a whole bunch of other things. So we've been talking to them about getting that done. So that will be exciting. So a lot of good things have come out of a bad storm.
Sometimes it cleans out the rotten and the bad stuff.
Right. Well, and we would have had to do something with Waterbury, and by getting FEMA dollars to help pay for a lot of this, that costs Vermont taxpayers a lot less.
Yeah.
So.
Whereas if you did it by yourself, because it wasn't, people were still in it and it wasn't blown down or something. Right. Right, it
wouldn't have happened.
We wouldn't get the state money, federal money.
Right, and we wouldn't have been able to do anything near that we were able to do as a result. So then the other area that we deal with, which is mostly policy, is we're working with the Department of Corrections. And that's been fascinating. We don't have a correctional facility here in Addison County, and so I haven't had a lot of experience, in that field. And we have learned so much. We have 8 facilities around the state. We have one women's facility that's in South Burlington, the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility, and we have beds for about 1,670 people. And then we have 265 inmates who are in Michigan, because we didn't have enough room. And at one point, a few years ago, we had as many as about 730 inmates out of state, and we're down to 265. So we've been able to get that down. And our goal is ultimately to not have anybody out of state, but we don't have enough beds right now.
Yeah.
And we have a contract that's expiring with the state of Michigan, or with the for-profit prison where people are at, June 15th. So we have to figure out something to do.
Yeah.
And
because private prisons are not as good as what we do in Vermont, where we teach the students, the people who are in prison, and how to. Sometimes we give them just a good education. Sometimes we also add things like tech issues
Right.
and so forth, and we try to help them get a job and get housing.
Exactly.
Getting housing is pretty tough.
Yes.
But, we work at it. So it's
Right.
important, but when you give them to the private, they want the money for themselves, and so they have not so good food. I don't know about Michigan, but I heard about in general.
Right.
The food is down, and there's no education of any kind.
Right. There's no programming.
Retraining.
There's no programming. I think when there were a lot of issues when we had a number of prisoners in Kentucky. In Michigan, it's a very different situation. It's a prison that was built for 1,900 people. The only people that are in this prison are our inmates. So the Vermonters are by themselves. They're not mixing with other people because there's nobody else there. And a lot of them apparently like it, is what I've been told, because it's quiet and they don't have all those other issues. But people who are getting close to the end of their sentence are brought back to Vermont when they get close so that they can go through the reentry programming and treatment that's done. So they don't just finish up in Michigan and they open the door and off they go. So there is some reentry work that's done once they're here. But on an ongoing basis, you're right, there's no programming that happens there. The challenge is that we don't have enough beds. And if people just look at the number of beds we have, yes, you might be able to fit more in, but a bed is not a bed in a prison. It's not like a hotel room where the beds are kind of all the same. You have general population beds. You have beds for people who are in segregation. We have infirmary beds. We have, I'm trying to look at, so medical beds. We have special beds that are for people who are getting booked and are going to stay for a little while, who are just being detained and are going to go out. So it's a lot more complicated. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle and figuring out where we can put people and how it should be appropriate. And some of our beds are for regional facilities. So we have a correctional facility in Rutland, the Marble Valley. That's a regional facility that is really for people who are getting close to reentry in Addison, Rutland, and Bennington counties.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're from Newport, there's a prison in Newport, but you don't go there. So we have sort of some special purpose groups. The St. Albans facility does a lot of sex offender programming, so that's where a lot of the sex offenders are. And then we also have some beds for federal and state prisoners. The Marshal Service pays us a daily rate, whether they use the beds or not, for a certain number of beds. So it's not as simple as you'd like to think it was.
No. Well, it's good that you learn all this and how it all works.
Right. So there's one piece I really want to talk about, because I know it's come up here at various events in Middlebury, and there have been concerns around the lack of housing, and you brought that up a minute ago, for inmates. So once a person leaves the prison system, they're not under the custody of the commissioner of the Department of Corrections. So if they go into transitional housing, they're not part of corrections anymore. They're part of a community agency or something that's doing that. And we have a problem in this state with transitional housing and having enough of it for people to go out. And so because there's not a place for some of these offenders to go when they finish their sentences, they're staying in because there isn't a place to go, and just opening the door can often lead to recidivism, so they just come right back in. So that's not very helpful. And housing isn't always equal too. If there are sex offenders, they often can't be in certain places because if they're around children or whatever, if there was a domestic violence, if that was the reason somebody was in, they can't go back to the home where the incident occurred. Nursing homes can't take sex offenders because then their address shows up as the place for a sex offender. And if you and I are in the nursing home and I'm the sex offender and you have grandchildren visiting you, you can't do that because there's a sex offender on site. So it makes it really difficult for where to put people. The Department of Corrections for the last 2 years has put out a request for proposal for transitional housing for sex offenders, and they've had 0 responses in 2 years. Nobody wants to build transitional housing for sex offenders.
So you were just putting it out for building it?
Just to build.
Just to build.
There were no bids.
No bids going.
No bids.
Because they couldn't get any permits?
I think nobody wanted to bid on building something. So we have an issue. I mean, how many communities really want to have transitional housing for sex offenders, and that's the problem. Is we want people to
Yes.
leave, but we don't want that in our backyard. So that's a real challenge that we have. So people end up staying longer sometimes because there's no good place for them to go.
Are they treated differently or than a regular prisoner?
Well, there's sex offender programming that happens in St. Albans. That's kind of where there's the specialty is. And then they also do, but they might move somewhere else for kind of reentry programming. It depends on, where they're from and where they might go back to. So, but in general, that's where the programming happens.
And how serious the issue is.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. So, so there's some real challenges. And in addition to this, most of our facilities were built when we had a different philosophy about how we wanted to treat prisoners, right? It was more prison for punishment and not thinking about rehabilitation. And now we're more about rehabilitation to become a more stable, productive member of society and helping people overcome barriers. And it's very difficult to do that with some of the actual layout and construction of our facilities. So there's work that we need to do.
Well, I was hearing about what they're doing in California. They're making it round, and then the center is where all of the employees go.
Yep.
So that they can see what's going around. If you have a long hallway and another hallway, you can't see what's going on in every place. But if you have a circle, and all the people, employees, people, are in the center, and they can just look out. And if there's a riot, they got a safe place.
It's much more efficient and maybe more effective in helping everybody. And ours aren't laid out that way. And in fact, at our Windsor facility is an old farm and has historic buildings on it. And so it's a series of different kinds of buildings, which makes it much more expensive to secure and to watch people. So, if we were to build a new facility and maybe close some others, that's, being considered not this year, but sometime down the road, I imagine it would be built completely differently than any of our facilities are now.
Yeah. But this is one thing to look at and think about.
Yeah.
Because it saves time, it saves money, it saves everything. Because I don't know how big the circle is and big the center is where the employees stay.
Right. Interesting. So lots going on the correction side of things.
I guess so. Yes, wow.
And, more to come over time. The initial crunch time is this Michigan contract because June 15th that expires. So something has to be done by June 15th. So that's that.
We have 5 minutes.
Okay. Do you want me to tell you a little bit about, connecting with your legislator and a little bit about the legislative process? So there's a website that is actually a really great website that we have, and for the Vermont legislature. You could just Google Vermont legislature, or you can go to legislature.vermont.gov. It's very interactive. It's updated many times during the day as agendas change on committees. When you go to that website...
Is that website, Vermont, is it spelled out?
Spelled out. Legislature.vermont, spelled out, .gov, G-O-V. And when you get on the homepage, you can look up a bill that all bills either begin with H or S, as you know, because they either start in the House or start in the Senate, and then they have a number. And if you don't know what the bill is, you could put in a couple of keywords and see what comes up. But you can look up bills, you can look up committees, find out who's on the committee. From the committee, all of everybody's names, you can click on their name and get their bio and get their contact information. If you want to look at agendas for any committee, if you're coming to the State House and you have a particular interest, you can click on the agenda for that committee and find out what's happening that day and go sit in. And as you know, the State House is the people's house, and we really mean it.
Yes, we do.
And so everybody is welcome to come to the State House and you're welcome to sit in and listen in on committee meetings. You don't have to be invited. The doors are shut. Open the door, come on in. We just shut the doors because it's so noisy in the hallways.
Yes. Well,
so come on in. We'd love to have you. We had the
really got to know that.
Yes,
because
so I want to emphasize
not trying
that.
to keep you out.
No, it's to keep the noise out, but you come in.
Yeah.
And you won't be asked to testify. You just can sit and listen. We had almost 27 people in our little tiny committee room when the restorative justice folks were there, and they all came into our committee, and it was a blast, but we were all very crunched. But it's all wonderful. We love having people come in. You can find research and reports. The Joint Fiscal Office does all kinds of financial analyses when we're thinking about doing things. One of the bills that's being looked at is raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and they're doing the research on the benefits cliff and how it would impact the cost that would be to people. So that's, they do all kinds of research. Everybody's welcome to look online and read the research. If you want to reach your legislature, you can do it through their, us online, but you can also call the Sergeant at Arms, whose name and phone number is on the website as well, and leave a message and just say you want to leave a message for your legislator, whoever that is. It could be, I and Amy Sheldon are your two legislators here in Middlebury, but you can get everybody.
And what happens is they write a little piece of paper.
Yeah.
So-and-so called, please call back, and the phone number.
Right.
And they give it to a page. When they get a page around, and then the page takes it. Sometimes, only once, it took 2 days.
Oh my goodness.
But most of the time, it takes a couple hours.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And it's nicely typed.
But that's in 20 years,
That's amazing.
One was about 2 days.
Oh, the page system is wonderful. We have middle school students who come. They apply, and there's, I don't know how many each time, 12, I think, each time. And we have 3 groups of them. They each come for 6 weeks. So we're in our second group of pages. And they're just adorable. I actually ended up helping one young man tie his tie the first day because he'd never had a tie.
I've seen.
Said, I used to tie my son, so if you'd like a little help. And he tried some more, and he said, I think I could use some help.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're great kids, and they have to do all their schoolwork in between when there's quieter time, in addition to doing their page duties. And
the page
it's a lot of fun.
Page duty is usually taking messages.
Taking messages, and a lot at the time when we're on the floor of the House doing things. They're sending messages back or bringing bills for people to sign. I'm the clerk of my committee, which means I have to accept all the bills. That's my job. Accept the bills and don't lose it before I get back to my committee room.
And they bring that to you.
Yes.
Pages bring that to you.
Yes, they do, and I have to sign my name, and then I get it, and it's great. So.
And these are the bills that the speaker has assigned to your committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he reads them out, or she reads them out.
Right.
And H102, H104, H105, and this one goes there, and then.
Right. Assigned to judiciary, assigned to corrections institutions, assigned to agriculture. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So. You should all come and watch sometime. It's fascinating to see what's happening, and you're very welcome. I can't stress that enough. So that would be great.
Don't forget, you can open the doors.
That's right.
The doors are shut because of the noise in the hallways, and you cannot hear the people speaking.
Exactly. And
because when you see a door shut, you just feel that I shouldn't go in.
Right.
And it's not that at all.
No.
It's never been that way.
Right. People are very welcome.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
They are.
It's a great place. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming and talking about all these things. That was very interesting.
And thank you for having me.
I hope you learned a lot, and thank you for watching the show. Bye-bye.